Hello, ladies, genties, and NBs. Something a little different today from my regular content of degenerate gaming and commentary. A new kind of thing I'm going to be calling Real Talk. I'm going to be breaking down something going on in the gaming space at the moment that's prevalent to me and that I feel educated enough to discuss in detail. So I guess without further ado, yeah, we're doing this. Trigger warning. This video contains potentially triggering or harmful material relating to sexual assault, relationship abuse, and rape. Sinatraa 1 is one of the biggest personalities in competitive esports, and one of, if not the most talked about Valorant personality outside of competitive play. I wish I could say for good reason, but unfortunately for everyone involved, this is not the case. He's decorated in both Overwatch and more recently Valorant, and he's been featured on The Tonight Show, starring Jimmy Fallon. At the beginning of the story, he was an active and very mechanically gifted player for the professional North American Valorant team, Sentinels. Sinatra's ex-girlfriend, Cleo, came out with allegations against Sinatraa that included, but were not limited to, coercion, mental abuse, gaslighting, manipulation, sexual assault, and even rape. The accusations came in the form of a Twitter post featuring a twit longer, or a Google Doc, in which Cleo described in great detail what exactly transpired during their relationship. While it's obviously important to remember that this was only from her perspective, and we had not yet had Sinatra's point of view included, the accusations were seriously severe, and the evidence provided to support that was pretty substantial as well. But that doesn't mean you can just dismiss all of Cleo's claims because Sinatraa hasn't had his point of view yet. Just maybe because you don't believe one part of what she said. Screenshots of Discord DMs, text messages, and most notably, a very disturbing audio recording of what very much sounds like sexual assault at the very least. Almost immediately from Cleo tweeting this, the discourse began to spread rampant. People defending Sinatraa without him even defending himself yet, as well as fanboys slating Cleo for having an OnlyFans, and just general misogyny and bias. To be clear, her having an OnlyFans should have absolutely zero implications for her safety and well-being, physically and mentality, and if you think otherwise, I would seriously worry about you. Let me be blunt here for a second. For something that was so alarmingly public, there was just simply a ridiculous amount of misinformation being spread by people everywhere, on Twitter, on YouTube, completely misunderstanding plain English statements from Cleo, Sinatraa, and Riot themselves. One of the main talking points of fanboys defending Sinatraa was that in the given audio clip they might have been role-playing. We have absolutely no evidence to support this at all, and I just think it's funny how you're willing to jump to that conclusion with no evidence or proof, yet all of the evidence provided by Cleo, that's somehow not good enough for you to be at least slightly concerned that Sinatraa might have done something wrong. So with an army of Sinatraa fans ready to lay down their lives to defend him, what words of wisdom does their saviour provide to either admit guilt or deny it outright? Well, it turns out, not much at all. Less than 70 words in which he tries to spread the blame and make it mutual, deny the assault aspect, notably no comment on the other countless cases and accusations that were in there, like the mental abuse and stuff like that. And to top it off, he actually lies about his commitment to cooperating with Riot's subsequent investigation. Speaking of investigation, boy is there a lot to unpack here. Let's just get the gist of it first. This was an internal/third-party investigation. It's not strictly speaking a legal proceeding, but it is similar in nature to that of a human resource investigation against an employee or an employer, for an example. In this case, we can think of Sinatraa as a business partner of some description for whatever purposes. Any findings or conclusion that Riot have absolute power over their involvement with Sinatraa in the future and his involvement with the game professionally moving forward. So what did Riot find? Well, first of all, they wasted no time letting everybody know, plain and simple, that Sinatraa did not uphold his public commitment on social media to provide the full audio and video clip referenced in the original post. Speculators say that this was likely because of legal advice, but surely a lawyer who thought the evidence supported their client would want the evidence to be brought forward, instead of hidden away so that Riot can subsequently suspend Sinatraa for as long as they like. Luckily for him, Riot's suspension was for 6 months, which came to a close in September of last year, and Riot chose not to extend it. Personally, I think he got off pretty lightly here, just on account for going back on his word to cooperate alone, completely ignoring the allegations themselves and the serious evidence provided. So what happened next? Well, after a short hiatus, Sinatraa returned to a thriving streaming career with subscriber-only mode in chat, and due to the insane backlash and overwhelming hate that Cleo experienced, and probably still does, she took a step back from social media and paused the legal proceedings. She made it very clear, however, that she did not drop the charges, something I see way too many people try to claim. Again, the misinformation. To break this down further, and where I think the misinformation might be springing from, is quite simple. Riot can undergo internal investigations, but they cannot force a person to provide evidence. As such, Sinatraa refusing to do so means that they couldn't pursue it any further, and if they wish to do so, would have to pass it on to legal authorities. That's why he got a 6-month ban, whereas he could have just maybe provided some evidence and I'd maybe avoided the ban altogether. So where does that leave us? Well, if you've been on Valorant Twitter in the last 24 hours, you've probably seen Sinatra's announcement that he's returning to competitive play and is looking for opportunities. This announcement was immediately met with backlash, criticism, and speculation. And rightly so. Max Katz, or Purist, broke it down simply with a really great take, A+ for the short and simple. And he's dead right. No conclusion was made from the investigation other than Sinatraa was on the defense. All the facts, and I mean literally all the facts, point towards him having something significant enough to hide here that he would rather take the 6-month ban from Riot and risk not being able to play Valorant professionally ever again over cooperating with the investigation and sticking to his word. A great Twitter thread by Twitter user Briggsy Cakes highlighted the problem with welcoming Sinatraa back perfectly and called out the alarmingly overwhelming acceptance from other professional players. This takes me to the real talk aspect about all of this. This is a perfect example of what rape culture looks like. People, usually men, willing to forgive and forget the wrongdoings of another person, again, usually a man, purely because they are friends or on some ridiculous technicality that, when put into perspective, is so incredibly insignificant that it just really makes you wonder. All this evidence brought forward from Cleo, and Sinatraa has brought nothing to his defense. A short statement and an automatic ban in his Twitch chat for mentioning anything relating to it seems like a real honest and upstanding take from me. This takes me to something everyone is going on and on about, incorrectly, and again with the heavy bias against Cleo, clearly. The burden of proof. The burden of proof refers to the obligation of an accuser to bring forth evidence for consideration when making an accusation. Simple. Here, with Cleo making accusations against Sinatraa, the burden of proof was on her. She provided this evidence, pretty much of it as you could possibly ask for, in fact. The burden of proof isn't always the burden of the accuser. As she had fulfilled the burden of proof, now the burden of defense falls on Sinatraa. In any legal proceeding, one side is considered to be correct, and the other must prove the assumed correct side wrong, hence the innocent until proven guilty statement. But innocent until proven guilty can go either way. Given all the evidence out there, in an American court in most states, and probably most of the wider world, Sinatraa would likely not be considered innocent until proven guilty at this current moment. In this case, if legal proceedings were to ensue, Cleo had done her part in bringing forward her evidence, and it would be thrown over to the defense. If a conclusion was to be made by a jury for everything that is currently public knowledge, Sinatraa would very likely be facing serious repercussions for the accusations against him. And I'm talking a little bit more than a 6-month suspension. Since it didn't go to legal proceedings, Sinatraa was just able to blank out Riot's investigation, take his suspension on the nose, and continue as if nothing happened 6 months later. What I'm trying to do here is not cancel culture. Holding someone accountable for their frankly disgusting actions is never cancel culture. Cancel culture is what people cry when their favourite celebrities get hit with repercussions for their wrongdoings. Actions have consequences, and if those actions turn away viewers in repulse, those consequences are looking pretty severe. What I'm trying to do is explain why what Sinatraa is doing since the alleged incidents is only adding to the damage significantly. Referring to the incident as being forced to step down and other such language shows that he still believes he did nothing wrong. Not even talking about the sexual assault or rape here, by the way, just the general text messages and Discord DMs, which by themselves are really bad. So what's the point of all this? Well, to start with, I don't know how you can read Cleo's statement and not be instantly sick to your stomach with what Sinatraa is accused of doing. Sure, he hasn't been proven guilty in a court of law, and unfortunately, despite that, neither side technically won or lost, and that's where many Sinatraa fans find comfort in justifying their continued support of him. But it's down to the court of public opinion. To me personally, given that, first of all, he hasn't given any evidence or proof in his defense, and secondly, he hasn't even denied the majority of the accusations, I won't be supporting his actions moving forward until I see proof of him being a changed man. Since the alleged incidents, he has shown zero signs of remorse, apology, or any indication whatsoever that he's remotely changed as a person. He hasn't told his fans to stop harassing Cleo, and if anything, only encouraged it with his initial statement and subsequent turning the blind eye against all the misogyny she faces. Funny how most of you were all wild up in defense of women when Jason Orr was accused of misogyny just a few weeks ago. I guess he just hasn't reached the threshold of clout in the esports scene where people are just willing to forget what he did because he said he didn't do it with no evidence to show otherwise. In conclusion, I'm all for people changing and becoming better people. 100%. But you have to show it through your actions, and Sinatraa has done the opposite. You can't deny doing bad things while also claiming you're a changed person from the person you were when you were accused of doing those bad things. It doesn't make sense. Avoiding the issue, setting an awful example to his primarily younger viewer base, and lying in his official statement are not becoming signs of someone willing to do better. And do better in what? I thought you didn't do anything wrong. What worsens the issue is the support he's getting for coming out with this. Prominent Valorant pro players supporting his return without properly understanding who they're welcoming back, or what implications this has. Not only supports, but actually normalizes and excuses actual rape and sexual assault. The definition of rape culture, by the way. Is this really how we want to encourage people to do better in the future? Anyway, that's basically all I have to say on the matter. This whole Real Talks thing is just for me to spit some thoughts out into the world and hope they land on ears in need of whatever it is I'm saying. Thanks for watching, and I hope you have a better understanding of what is going on in Valorant right now.